the DPDP rules are out, and the most common question that we get from our customers is how do we design our DPDP journey? Unless you create a holistic approach, it may result in silos and the whole process may fail. So we recently published a paper on end-to-end DPDP compliance strategy for your enterprise. So this video, we are going to dive into it and look into each section of how you can learn it and unlock value for your enterprise. Let's dive into the video. Welcome to the first episode of PrivaSapiens DPDP podcast. In this session, we are going to discuss about the challenges faced by enterprises in approaching DPDP holistically, and what are the challenges being faced by enterprises, and how should they look at DPDP as a requirement and build their DPDP journey. To solve the market's problem, we have come up with an end-to-end DPDP strategy for enterprises, and we have just published a paper. We will share the link of the paper in the description, so you can use the link. So this is designing enterprise privacy journey for end-to-end DPDP compliance. So what is happening is enterprises are looking at siloed approach to DPDP compliance. It is like five blind men trying to identify what an elephant is. So when you don't have integratable solutions across your DPDP compliance strategy, data and AI lifecycle, if one solution does not speak with other solution, then it becomes a challenge. So when you are foreseeing the DPDP compliance strategy, you have to ensure how you are going to play out the entire lifecycle, starting from consent collection to data governance to data security safeguards to AI usage in your ecosystem. So unless you have a integrated approach, it may be in silos, data may not flow, risk may not be mitigated, it may result in breach. Your DSR or data principal rights may not associate with your data requirements and data governance requirements, so it can become a mess. So how do you ensure that your DPDP strategy works end to end is a very foundational problem that the market is facing, and that is what we are trying to solve for the market through this video and through this paper. So in today's session, we are going to look at designing enterprise privacy journey end to end for DPDP compliance. Now, how do you do this end to end approach is a very fundamental problem, and what is even constituting the end to end compliance strategy is a very foundational problem that market has. So we would see how do you structure it, what are the components in that, and how to approach it. First, we will start with introduction of DPDP compliance. How can this become a strategic advantage to you? We will start with it, and then how do you do an integrated data protection across the data lifecycle? This is what is important for you. Because data flows across the ecosystem within internal organization, external organizations. At every phase of the data flow in its life cycle, you will have to ensure that it is compliant. Collecting consent is just the first contractual obligation. Then the entire life of data, you have to ensure that it is compliant with the regulatory obligations. It has technical safeguards in place. It is processed as per the consent requirements. How do you ensure that is a very critical requirement. Then why siloed traditional and technical safeguard ignorant approach will result in a definite failure to achieve DPDP objectives, and especially given that it's a techno-legal regulation, right? What do you mean by techno-legal regulation? Why a siloed approach will not help? We have to understand this from a regulatory and technical perspective. This is what we will cover in section 3. Section 4, how does PrivaSapien help in end-to-end DPDP compliance? We'll look at it, how an integrated strategy significantly accelerates your journey. How do you plan and scale for DPDP compliance? Let us say you have 400 applications in your organization. How are you going to scale the compliance techniques for all these applications within a given time period? It's a big challenge, right? How do you plan and scale it? It's going to be a critical requirement. In the process, can you use something like Agentic DPIA? Because We don't have people. You cannot put infinite number of people in setting up templates, doing approvals, understanding the regulatory requirements, understanding the challenge in the data. It becomes a mess. So how do you ensure that you use AI intelligently in your privacy journey and accelerate your privacy journey 1000x, right? And then how do you, for full stack DPDP, what kind of use cases you have in your ecosystem? And all business requirements should be use case driven. If you are giving data to a call center, if you are giving data to analytics, if you are giving data to campaign management or marketing, what kind of technical safeguards you need to have? This is the conversation you need to have. This is the brainstorming you need to have with your vendors or before you build your RFP. This is very, very important, right? And then at the end of the day, privacy, if you just look at it as a checklist approach, then it will become a cost center. But when you look at privacy as an enabler or with technical safeguards, privacy can become an enabler and privacy can become a strategic advantage and profit center for your organization. How do you achieve the strategic advantage and make privacy a profit center, right? How do you pitch to a CIO? How do you pitch to a CFO? And how do you ensure that the CTO succeeds at the end of the day becomes very, very critical. And how can privacy help in defining your AI strategy, right? This becomes very critical in your privacy journey. So let's look into it, and I'm very, very excited to have this conversation with you. Okay, now one very important thing that we have to understand in terms of privacy is how does privacy help in your organization's data and AI strategy, right? So if you look at Apple, the core of their offering is privacy. If you look at the Apple logo itself, they have redesigned the logo like Apple with a lock on top, right? So why does large enterprises like this do it? Because privacy adds to trust in your ecosystem, and with more trust, right, privacy adds to additional trust in your ecosystem, and with additional trust, customers are interested in giving more data. And as you get more data, you can generate more insights, build more AI services, and as a result of it, you can add more innovation, and that will result in better experience for customer, which results in more profitability. And with more profitability and trust, people will give you more data, and this becomes a vicious cycle. This will become a strategic advantage for your organization in unlocking data. So privacy is not just a cost center where you put checklists and compliance and templates and DPIAs alone, but you build trust with your customer, gain more data, unlock more data in a legal way, and use it for multiple purposes in the organization, which can accelerate an organization's ability to achieve its business objectives without violating regulatory requirements. This is very, very foundational. So DPDP Act, as Prime Minister Modi said, is a techno-legal regulation. What do you mean by a techno-legal regulation? Is that the technology is at the core of the regulatory requirement. And this includes multiple stages and there are clear obligations at various stages. Let us say the data collection, assessing the risk in data, governing the data in your ecosystem, protecting the data with technical safeguards, unlocking data, deleting data, and using data for algorithmic purposes. This becomes very, very critical and central to DPDP obligations. So just don't look at consent and DPIA, but look at the data and AI lifecycle across your enterprise, so that you can convert this into a superpower by ensuring privacy compliance across the data and AI lifecycle. That should be your objective. Now, how do you achieve it? That requires an end-to-end approach, end-to-end architectural and integratable approach to DPDP. If you do it, this can become a strategic advantage for you in complying with the requirements. Now, this is a very interesting and a single pane objective of DPDP, which covers all aspects of DPDP in a single slide, right? So given that you are an enterprise which is trying to ensure that you do right kind of services to your data principal, what are your objectives? You need to give notice to customer, collect consent from customer, understand, by this way you get data inside your organization from customer with corresponding consents and consent obligation in place. You understand the privacy risk in data that is being collected, what is the level of risk, what kind of obligations come with this, and where is this data going to downstream parties. Let's say the data is going to different business teams in different ecosystems. What kind of technical safeguards are you putting while you are sharing this data? Let us say this is with marketing, this is with sales, this is with call centers, this is let us say you are doing third party transfer, this is cross border transfer. So when you are sharing data with multiple downstream parties, what are the risks present in each of these flows? How do you ensure what happens if data gets breached with this third party, right? How do you control that despite data getting breached, it is still protected, it does not result in personal data breach? This is going to be very critical. For that you need to have technical safeguards in place, right? That is what the security requirements of rule 6 of the rules say that you need to put security safeguards in place, especially when the data is identifiable or relatable, which is still personal data, and if you don't put technical safeguards in place, it can result into a penalty of 250 crore. How do you solve that is going to be a critical requirement, and as soon as the purpose is complete, then you should delete the data. And it should be used only for the limited purpose which is it is consented and it is approved in the organization. If any of this is missed, then it results in breach, and you have breach notification obligations as well, and the penalty can be up to 250 crore, right? So you can play the data either in two areas. One is identifiable or relatable data, which is under a penalty of 250 crore, or if you make the data unrelatable, right, then it is basically exempt. Penalty is not applicable, it is exempt, and this is where your continuous processing comes in, right? So there is no time limitation on it if it is non-personal in nature or non-relatable to an individual. How do you achieve it is where pets come to your rescue. When you do this, this significantly accelerates your privacy journey and unlocks data, and privacy becomes a profit center and enabler in your ecosystem rather than a disabler or a stumbling block in your ecosystem. And this is a very important way of looking at privacy obligations. So following, we saw that the notice is critical, and based on the notice, consent is collected, the data is collected, you try to understand the risk in data, right? Now based on the consent, one very important thing that organizations miss out is collecting consent, or consent management is just the beginning of the journey. Either private consent management or public consent management, does not matter, but given that you have collected consent, your processing of data across the life cycle should be based on consent, because once you have received data and you have received consent, let us say customer withdraws consent and says that I don't want any further call, marketing call from the credit card department, right? So customer is saying I'm okay for savings account call, but I'm not okay for cross-selling through credit card or for credit card, right? How do you achieve this objective in your enterprise ecosystem? Because the moment your credit card team calls the customer is going to say that you have breached my privacy by calling me, and you have called me without my consent, so it's a breach. So I want to speak to your DPO, or I want to take this to the data protection board, please take this as my grievance, right? This becomes a challenge. How do you achieve it in your business ecosystem is going to be a fundamental problem. So it is not just consent collection, but how do you ensure that consent based data flow is happening in your ecosystem? How does the consent based data flow happens in the ecosystem? Limited consent based processing happens. What are the attributes or features of consent? How do you integrate with data principal rights? And based on all this, how do you ensure consent based access control? This is very, very central and important. If this does not work, there is no point of collecting consent. In fact, it is counterproductive if you don't do consent based access control, because end user has the right to say that my data is breached, you process the data beyond my consent, or it is violating my consent. So hence it is very important that you ensure whenever you are building your journey, the first thing that is critical for you is consent-based access control in your ecosystem. Next important thing that organizations have to understand is that there is significant difference between privacy and security. So and this difference is not generally understood by the market, so it is very important to understand what is the difference between security and privacy, and this starts with discovery, right? So what is difference at the discovery level between security and privacy, you may ask, right? DSPM is primarily for security, while privacy threat modeling is for privacy. And what is the difference between DSPM and privacy threat modeling? DSPM looks at identifiable data in your business ecosystem, right? While privacy threat modeling looks at both identifiable and relatable data. And your DPDP obligation is both identifiable and relatable data, and not just identifiable data, right? This is a very foundational difference, and as you understand this, it becomes critical to ensure all your assessments, all your approvals are based on the regulatory obligation of identifiable and relatable as per 2T of the DPDP Act. So it is very fundamental to understand, and your obligation is this whole length, right? And not just identifiability. If you are the only person with a specific salary at a specific age group in your company, just 2-3 attributes can result in re-identification of you. So it is important that it is not relatable, not just identifiable, it is not relatable also. So just protecting PIIs will not help. You have to ensure that the data holistically is protected and it's not re-identifiable. This is very, very critical, and that results in difference between DSPM and PTM. If you look at the origin of DSPM, DSPM originated to understand where and all PII is and secure that. So primarily DSPM or security is primarily for data protection at rest, right? And data protection in transit. It is privacy is what is meant for data protection in use. So it is important that we protect data in use, that's where privacy comes in. Hence, this is very different from traditional security, which is protection for data at rest and transit. So this difference has to be understood, and in your data lifecycle, this is what is critical. You have to protect data in use, right? As you do this, it will enable you to unlock data the right way in your business ecosystem, and this is a subset. Identifiable data is a subset of identifiable and relatable data discovery. So whenever you do data discovery for privacy, you ensure that you look at privacy threat modeling rather than simple DSPM. While DSPM has its utility in the security world, in privacy world, it is critical that you understand PTM, because the advantage of PTM is that on top of PTM, you can get a score of risk, and this risk score can be used in DPIA, and you can approve data flows based on this risk score. It is like your sugar level or blood pressure, which you can see as a number and then recommend different medication for different levels of risks, right? It enables you in accelerating the data flow. Now once you have understood the risk in the data which is being requested, the next objective is to understand the business requirement, understand the technical risk in data, and accordingly unlock data with right technical safeguards. So there are 3 components here. One is risk assessment, right? So you have to understand the risk in data, which can be done with privacy threat modeling as we just saw, right? Quantify the risk, and then what kind of mitigation are possible, and can you have it in a conversational way rather than creating templates in every scenario, which is like impractical, and it takes months of time to put a template in place, approve the template, and approve the data flow. It is a very, very troublesome process. can you bypass it by using Agentic DPIA? This is a very revolutionary process. This enables you to accelerate data flow in your ecosystem without templates or without the headache, but very deterministically, ensuring that the DPIAs for new templates or new flows formats can be done in minutes rather than in months. This is very revolutionary and can accelerate, and DPIA can be done in minutes, and DPO can be an approver or human in the loop in the process to understand the risk and approve the risk. The users will get the benefit of a very natural conversational interaction in putting the request across for DPIA. The conversation with the business user will be purely business oriented. Then the insights would be based on the regulatory requirements and technical safeguards, which would be presented to the DPO along with the gaps, and DPO can accordingly approve or make recommendations to the data flow requirement. This drastically changes the way DPIA is done today, and it is super powerful for enterprises in unlocking data very quickly in a very efficient way for the whole system. Now, once you have done DPIA or you are doing DPIA, you have to understand how do you mitigate the risk in the data to approve a specific data flow, right? To understand the risk mitigation, broadly there are only two types. Type 1 is limited processing of data, limited consented use, and continuous use with protection and exemption. So this is as per 6.1a of the rule, where you put technical controls in sharing personal data, and this is as per 6.1d. This is for continuous processing of data. So when you do continuous processing of data, you have to ensure that the data is not personal, because in the personal form you will have the obligations of data principal rights. So when you do privacy enhancing technologies like differential privacy, k-anonymity, t-closeness, synthetic data, that becomes non-personal with mathematical guarantees, that will fall into the continuous processing category. So for your applications like giving data to testing team, or for analytics, or for giving it to business analysts, or for other purposes where person level information is not required, you have to go for continuous processing for archiving, statistics, research purposes, all these things. Direct exemption is granted under 6.1d, right? If it is personal, where you are giving data to a third party call center, where re-identification is important, there you need to do it for limited consented use only, right? If it is used in unconsented way, it will result in breach, and you need to have right technical safeguards in place to ensure that it is done properly. This is very, very critical. So whenever you are approving a DPIA, you will have to look at whether it is a limited processing or continuous processing, and for each of them, if it is limited process, what kind of technical safeguards you need to have, and for continuous processing, what kind of technical safeguards you need to have. This understanding is very foundational in approving DPIAs. Now we have discussed about different pets for continuous processing and consent based limited processing. Now in terms of what are the technical safeguards, what kind of safeguards will help you in each of these use cases is where pets come in. Now what are those pets? You have things like k-anonymity, t-closeness, k-anonymity and t-closeness. This is for sharing anonymous data with mathematical guarantees, differentially private querying or differentially private insight generation, which will help you in sharing data, let us say with a business analyst without actually sharing data. Synthetic data for, let's say, application development team or testing team, pseudonymous inference for AI teams, or zero knowledge proof if you have to prove certain things, that you have enough balance, bank balance, or you were there at a specific place, specific time, things like those, without actually disclosing your information. For example, Aadhaar, sharing Aadhaar card and other KYC information. Zero knowledge proof can be a good example. So there are various kinds of technologies which you can use in unlocking different kind of data for different use cases. This is what you have to understand and use it during the DPIA approval process. So let's look at data erasure requirements. In terms of data erasure requirement, there are certain permissions which are available or exemptions which are available, which you can use during deletion. So if you look at rule 8, there is a direct rule obligation for you to delete the data, but there are exemptions for in 17(2)(b) for you for archiving, research or statistical purposes, which is where the privacy enhancing technologies come. This can help you in privacy enhancing technologies can help you in achieving this exemption requirements for research, statistical and archival purposes. And there are industry specific exemptions also available, which are only applicable for certain industries, where when user logs in, it is considered as a specific consent for that specific purpose for which he logs in, or if you are using virtual token, if he logs in, it can be stored and it can be reversed only when user gives consent. There are some special scenarios for certain specific sectors like e-commerce, gaming, etc. Other than that, when it is not available, then you have to go for deletion. So you have to understand when you should delete the data and in what scenarios you can store the data for continuous processing or for an infinite purpose under archiving, research or statistical purposes using privacy enhancing technologies. This is very important to understand. This is a very interesting topic. Why siloed, traditional and technical safeguard ignorant approaches fail to achieve the objectives of DPDP? Primarily because there are a lot of obligations. So let us say you have 100 applications and there are 25 obligations. It becomes like 2500 obligation centric workflows in your ecosystem, and it's like manually not possible to protect all these. It's not humanly possible as well. So it is very important that you put technical safeguards. And the problem in the traditional method is that if you do privacy policy, so if you do discovery separately, and then if you do privacy policy, this is separate, it does not speak with the discovery process, it is separate, it does not speak with your consent cookie process, and this does not speak with your DSR, and you don't have a specific strategy for technical safeguards, then this whole process is broken down. Your data does not flow in your ecosystem. The risk of the data flow is not understood. The consent does not speak with how the data is used downstream. Then you are in deep trouble because you don't know how the data is being used in a life cycle. You can neither approve the data flow, you can neither disapprove, because then business will suffer. You will be in a very difficult catch-22 situation if you don't think through your data life cycle properly, right? So it is very important, ensure that you understand how data will flow across the life cycle in a proper way, and then design this. So if you look at DPDP, which is a techno-legal regulation, your highest penalty is for not having technical safeguard, which is up to 50 crore. Now if you put a x-axis, y-axis, and the y-axis is the penalty of 250 crore, and your x-axis starts from consented processing to continuous processing, right? Your technical safeguard is across, this is 61A and this is 61D. So the technical safeguard spans across the spectrum, and it is the highest because it is 250 CR, right? So this is the broadest, widest and the most deepest technical obligation that you have. Hence it is called as a techno-legal regulation, because the highest priority is for not having technical safeguards, reasonable security safeguards in place. While consent DPR requirements are 50 crore and risk assessment and DPIA, if you are a SDF, then it is 150 crore. Right? Now this is for consented processing, this can be for either of them. Right? So this is the obligation. So you have to understand that your obligations falls this way, and hence when you are planning your privacy journey, right, from an end-to-end perspective, it is very, very important that you look at it from this perspective. So we have been speaking about data lifecycle. What is a data lifecycle? What happens in a data lifecycle? is you get consent for data in your business ecosystem, right, from the end user, right? You get consent. So with consent you get data into your ecosystem, and then based on the consent data comes into your ecosystem, you do a discovery of the data, and then when the data is being requested by multiple downstream parties, right, you do DPIA, Agentic DPIA, so that it can be faster, and then you do an approval, you capture the ROPA of the agentic process, and then when the data is flowing to multiple parties, you take the data and then give different kinds of mitigations for the data for different purposes, right? For example, for different seasons you wear different clothing. Similarly, data for different, to protect the privacy of data, you need to put different kinds of technical safeguards in place for the data, like we have different summer dressing, winter dressing. Similarly, for different kinds of data processing which is gonna happen, you do different kinds of technical safeguards, like K anonymity or T closeness or differential privacy or synthetic data, format preserving encryption or pseudonymization. So you take different flows for different use cases depending upon the risk in that use case and the level of consent present in the use case, whether it is consented limited processing or continuous processing. You have to understand that, and you are giving data to an internal party or external party. How much do you trust that entity who is going to be a data processor or a sub-processor, and accordingly put technical safeguards and allow this data flow to happen. This is very, very critical, and this is a very critical part of the life cycle, because the data, if it gets breached here as well, it should not result in personal data breach, or it should not result in a 250 crore penalty for your organization. And if it is personal data, you have to ensure that it is in line with the DPIA that we did earlier, and when the data is shared even in the personal form with technical safeguards, you need to ensure that there is a consent based access control for the data flow which is happening, because tomorrow even you are pseudonymizing it. If user says that I don't want to give data for any purpose, the pseudonymization should not be allowed. While continuous processing can happen, pseudonymization or encryption, tokenization are all personal data form which falls under 6.1a. So you have to ensure that consent based access control is in place for pseudonymous data processing as well. And based on that, you can use it for data ecosystem or AI ecosystem. It can be internal, external, agentic security, AI inference, model training or red teaming, privacy preserved machine learning. All these use cases in your enterprise ecosystem would be supported, and this is what we mean by data lifecycle. And this is what you have to understand. If you plan for your DPDP, you have to understand this whole flow and ensure that this solutions that you are looking at are integrable, and they will together deliver your end-to-end privacy journey for your enterprise. So as we saw in the previous slide, right, there are different kinds of processing or technical safeguards which are possible. So once you have consented data in your ecosystem from the data principal, this data can flow in a pseudonymized way to a third party, or anonymized way, or synthetic way. This falls under 6.1b, so which is, this is 6.1a and this is 6.1d. This is continuous processing. If it is not, even if the data gets breached, which is anonymized or synthetic, it does not fall under personal data, so there is no problem because it is non-relatable. So this gives a strategic advantage for you in unlocking data for various use cases, but ensure that you have mathematical guarantees in it, verify it, and ensure that that is aligned with your requirements, right? This is very, very critical. So it is important to balance between privacy and utility of data when you do this process. We have been deploying privacy tools for end-to-end privacy journey for multiple enterprises, and we understand the challenge in doing this end-to-end deployment in enterprise ecosystem, which is very vast, diverse. There are different kinds of applications which have different requirements, and different kind of stakeholders have to be involved in the process. So typically you will have to understand, you will have to put a policy in place, and it should be standardized, so everybody is aligned with the policy requirements. Then you need to deploy the platform for your business ecosystem, integrate it for different applications as they get onboarded. Then understand the risk in data with discovery and DPIA, put technical safeguards in place, ensure that you start collecting consent. Every application you have to do a corresponding UAT and then go live for the application. Now what we recommend is that you take one set of applications, let us say 4 to 5 applications, and do this. Once you have the deployment, then you can integrate it, do a risk assessment of the data, do DPIA, technical mitigation, and start collecting consent for the business purpose. Ensure that subsequent data flow are in line with the consented processing of data in the business ecosystem, right? This is very critical, and you can make it as a package which integrates all these obligations per application, and once you do it for one or a set of application, then you can accelerate adoption of it across multiple applications. This is very, very important. So this is where the repeatability of the problem, this is where the repeatability of the solution comes in, where you have taken one set of application, applied cookie consent, PTM, DPIA, ROPA, CBAC and other technical safeguards across the data AA lifecycle for one set of application. Ensure that you have standardized your process, standardized your APIs, standardized your functions, ticketing systems, internal workflows, all those things, DPIA, what will be the workflow, what will be the approval mechanism, who will be approving it. Those are the ones which actually takes more time. So once those are done, then what kind of technical safeguard, how do you use those safeguards, in which scenario, that you need to have clarity. Once you do this for one set of applications, then it is very easy to accelerate it across your business ecosystems, across multiple applications, like initially tens, hundreds of applications. It is much easier to roll out once you have certainty in terms of policy, people and technology which is in place. So do first set of applications really well, then you can accelerate across multiple applications much faster. It's very important that you do it faster, you don't become a roadblock in an enterprise's adoption of privacy. So we have come up with a revolutionary technology called Agentic DPIA. This enables you in doing agentic approvals, so user can have a very conversational interaction with a agentic chatbot, where they can say what is the business purpose, why are they requesting data, what is the purpose of processing, what kind of safeguards they will do at a high level in a business friendly language, and then the agent will analyze and then say what is the risk, summarize the risk to the DPO, what are the technical safeguards that can be taken, what can be the gaps, how this can be mitigated. So it will provide all this to the DPO, and DPO can make a recommendation, and this can be implemented by the enterprise in unlocking data, which can happen in minutes rather than months, where if you are creating a template, you need to create a long template, verify it, check the options, integrate the options, get multiple approvals, and then implement it. Still you don't know whether user is understanding it or not. It is very static. Users don't like because it is very static. It does not align with how they see the business. The questioner cannot understand the business requirement. So it becomes very messy, and at the end of the day, it does not solve anybody's problem, and it takes a long time. But when you put a very intelligent system like Agentic DPIA, it happens in minutes. It works in the context of the data requester. It provides it in a very non-legal, user-friendly terms. It identifies gap automatically. It empowers the consultant or a DPO by making them a human-in-the-loop process. It enables you to map against your business objectives and reduces the time from months to minutes in your business ecosystem. So this supercharges your privacy journey, and it's almost at the same cost, or in fact it saves significant amount of cost in terms of people and resources, and enables you to achieve those objectives at a much shorter, much more dependable way. So this can empower consultants, and it can empower DPOs in accelerating the privacy journey in an organization. When you are planning for your DPDP, you think through the use cases that you have in your ecosystem, and for the use case, what techniques do you need, what solutions you need across the use case is what you have to look at. These can be at different levels. So understand those requirements and accordingly implement it. That is what we have covered in the paper in terms of, for example, credit risk assessment. What kind of data collection you need, what processing you need, what kind of consent you need. Does it involve third party processing? What kind of technical safeguards you need if you are giving it to third party? All these have to be considered for building the data flow in your business ecosystem. Similarly, let us say you want to do analytics for data sharing, or you want to build a model, or you are doing cross-border transfer to a third party in the business ecosystem, or you are trying to collect consent, there is a withdrawal of consent. How do you process the data? How do you delete the data? Or how do you archive the data in your ecosystem? So for different, think through the use cases that you get in your business ecosystem. Ensure that you have the right privacy stack which meets your requirement across all use cases. This is very critical for you. So we have captured some scenarios and examples. And how do you make privacy a strategic advantage and profit center is something which is very deep, and you have to understand that well. First is, in the traditional model, the data may be flowing with multiple people in multiple scenarios. So let us say this is the data coming from data principal, and then you are collecting the data in your ecosystem and you are sharing with multiple parties in the ecosystem, right? And if the data even gets breached in one scenario, right, when let us say the user has withdrawn consent and this is a call center, right, and the data and the call center agent is calling the user without the consent, or sending an email, or SMS or app notice or advertisement or marketing without user's consent, this is considered as a breach. Now user can ask the data protection officer, DPO, why he is getting these calls, and also he can go to the data protection board telling that the business is continuously violating users' privacy, in which case if you have sent an SMS, email or call, they have digital proofs of it, and they can go to data protection board of their consent withdrawal and how it is you are still not complying with it. So this becomes a problem. So even if there is a breach, whether it is an audit level breach or actual data breach and exfiltration, and then the data is used to attack the user, or internally we are not following process, or technical safeguards are not in place, all of these result in a breach, which is what your fundamental challenge is. And this is where technical safeguards are very critical, because you just cannot focus on consent or process oriented systems like DPIA and ensure that this breach does not happen. So for this, what you need to do is to ensure that you are having technical safeguards in place, right? Once you collect the data in your ecosystem, you understand what is identifiable data and what is unrelatable data, and put corresponding technical safeguards, for example, pseudonymization or anonymization or synthetic data or differential privacy in sharing processing data in your business ecosystem, so that even if data gets breached here, right, it does not result in re-identification. There is no way for this data to re-identify the user, right? It is not re-identifiable. Similarly, if it is pseudonymized, ensure that it cannot come back to the user, because you have corresponding protection in place like secure multi-party compute or tokenization. Depending upon the scenario, the better controls you have, it will protect you better in protecting data and preventing it from re-identifying principals. When this happens, you have successfully prevented breach in your ecosystem, and thus customer also wins, his trust improves, he gives more data. You can also unlock data for multiple other purposes, and business also becomes empowered in unlocking data in your business ecosystem. So given the nature of technical safeguards and we are speaking about unlocking data, ROI becomes very, very important in proving it to the business that you have enabled businesses unlocking various kinds of data, given data to different internal parties with technical safeguard, which was not possible earlier. So we have unlocked data for various business purposes, enabled business in using data for various, let's say, pricing, model building, persona level insights, sharing data with third parties with technical safeguards. So these were not possible earlier, and you have made it possible by unlocking data across the data and AI lifecycle. This empowers you to create new value in business, quantify it, take it to the CFO's office, take it to the CIO's office, and tell that by means of doing this, we are able to unlock so much value for business and enable you to create significant strategic advantage for business in the ecosystem. Right? That makes privacy practice a profit center rather than a cost center, and that is where the technical safeguards and privacy enhancing technologies come into picture. So we have provided some examples of that in the paper, and as conclusion, our recommendations to you are that ensure end-to-end compliance in mind. So have end-to-end compliance in mind when you are actually starting your journey, right? This you cannot plan later. So ensure that end-to-end compliance is in your mind, and prepare your RFPs and your privacy journey, Gantt charts based on end-to-end compliance in mind. What do you want to achieve in 18 months, right? What kind of technical safeguards you need to have, what from consent, DPIA, notice, technical safeguards, unlocking data for various use cases, various business scenarios, for various applications. How are you going to plan it for one application, and then how are you going to scale it for n applications? That is what you have to think through. That is the most important thing. If you go wrong in that, it will become a problem later, because it will become siloed and you will not think through. You will spend multiple, your entire budget in problems which does not cover all your bases. Look for integrated solutions which will enable you to solve problem across your DPDP requirements. Ensure your time and budget are allocated as per the priority of DPDP regulation. This is very important, because it's like writing exams in your childhood, right? You may end up starting with 1 mark question. You focus so much in 1 mark question that you spend half your examination time in 1 mark question, and you don't have time to even attend some of the 10 mark questions. It will be a catastrophe. It is very similar here. Ensure that your technical safeguards, like you look at the whole obligation, and when you are starting your journey, you structure how you want to spend your time, resource and budget for all the obligations of DPDP requirements that are applicable to you, for all your, especially from a business scenario perspective, and then construct your journey, prepare a Gantt chart, prepare what protocol, what solutions you need for different flows of your privacy journey, accordingly construct your RFP requirements. This is very, very critical. And then ensure how it can be a profit center, as we discussed recently, how unlocking data can be of higher return on investment for you, and present it according to your board, to your risk officers, to your data architects, and to your data governance teams and the AI teams. Get all the stakeholders on board and make it as a very successful, very critical journey for your enterprise, right? Ensure that you have a phased plan for rollout by application. Do it for one application end to end, and then scale it for n applications. Standardize the process so that it becomes easier for you to scale. And finally, ensure that you have a very good way to summarize the value proposition to the business. How much data you are unlocking, how many people you are giving data with technical safeguards, which would not have been possible without technical safeguards. How are you integrating everything from consent to technical safeguards to ensure complete compliance? So this would basically transform your entire digital strategy and AI strategy for your organization, and this can create significant value for your business. Looking forward to partner with you and unlock your data and AI for your enterprise, and ensure that your privacy journey becomes a mega success and becomes a case study for the industry to follow. Thank you.